A gasp tore through the studio as Dr. Phil's hand up, freezing the cameras in their tracks. Every eye locked on the doorway where a woman stood, trembling, her silhouette glowing against the backlight. She was a ghost from a lost past, unseen for 12 heart-wrenching years, a daughter who vanished, now standing before a mother who never stopped aching for her. The air thickened with raw anticipation. No one, not the producers, not the crew, not the audience, and certainly not Linda, the mother clutching a faded photograph in the guest chair, saw this coming. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't staged. This was Dr. Phil smashing the rules of television because some moments outweigh fame, fortune, or applause. 3 weeks earlier, Linda sat across from him, her hands shaking around that worn photo of a bright-eyed teenager, a girl brimming with promise who was now 28 and a stranger. "I don't even know if she's alive," Linda whispered, her voice splintering like fragile glass. The audience sat frozen, trapped in the heavy silence that follows pain too deep for words. Dr. Phil leaned closer, his gaze softening, no longer just a host, but a man gripped by her sorrow. "Tell me about the day she left," he pressed. Linda's voice faltered as she relived the fight, bitter words, a slammed door, and then a void. 12 years of silence. No calls, no texts, just an abyss where her daughter, Sarah, once stood. She spoke of fruitless police reports, private investigators hitting dead ends, and birthday cards sent to nowhere. 12 years of wondering if her daughter was safe, warm, loved, or gone forever. The studio was so still you could hear hearts shattering. What Linda didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that Dr. Phil's team had been searching for Sarah. For 3 weeks, they chased leads beyond Linda's reach. 2 days before the taping, they found her, Sarah Mitchell, living under a new name in a quiet Oregon town, waiting tables, carrying the scars of a choice made as a terrified 16-year-old. The producers wanted to choreograph the reunion, to position cameras for maximum drama, but when Dr. Phil read Sarah's hesitant words, "I'm terrified, I don't know if she'll forgive me," he made a call that stunned his team. "Bring her here," he told his senior producer. "Don't tell Linda, don't announce it. Let Sarah decide when she's ready." Smash that subscribe button and drop a comment, because the raw, breathtaking truth of this story is about to hit you hard. As the taping rolled on, Linda poured out her anguish, her voice heavy with 12 years of regret. She spoke of the cruel words she'd flung in anger. "If you walk out that door, don't come back." Words she'd trade her soul to undo. She confessed the guilt that devoured her, the therapy sessions, the support groups for parents of missing children, the endless nights staring at a phone that never glowed with her daughter's name. Dr. Phil listened with that piercing intensity that makes guests forget the world is watching. "Do you blame yourself?" he asked. "Every damn day," Linda said, her voice a raw wound. "I was angry, scared. She was dating someone I didn't trust, making choices I couldn't stomach. But she was my baby, and I chose pride over love." The audience wept, some silently, others openly. Tissues passed like lifelines by the crew. Dr. Phil's eyes flicked to the stage's edge, a fleeting glance no one caught. There, hidden from Linda's view, stood Sarah, clutching the backstage curtain so tightly her knuckles glowed white. A producer whispered, "You don't have to do this now. We can wait." But Sarah's eyes were glued to the monitor, watching her mother sob, clutching that same photograph from her 16th birthday. "She still has it," Sarah murmured, her voice cracking. Something inside her shattered, and courage surged in its place. Dr. Phil saw it on the backstage feed, the moment Sarah decided. He didn't wait for cues or commercial breaks. He raised his hand, stopped the tape. His voice thundered, startling the crew. Cameras dropped. The audience buzzed with confusion. Linda's head snapped up, eyes wide. "What's happening?" Dr. Phil stood, his face unreadable but resolute. "Linda, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She nodded, gripping the photograph like a lifeline. Off camera, he turned to the shadows and spoke, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the room. "Sarah, this is your moment. No one can choose for you, but if you're ready, your mother is right here." The studio fell into a deafening hush. Linda's face drained of color. "What did you just say?" she whispered. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then a hand parted the curtain, and a woman stepped into the light. Linda shot to her feet, the photograph slipping from her fingers, fluttering to the floor. Her breath caught, her voice lost, because there, just 10 feet away, was her daughter. Older, weathered, but radiant with the beauty of survival. "Mom," Sarah said, her voice small but brimming with hope. Linda's legs buckled. "Doctor," Phil caught her arm, steadying her. "It's okay," he said softly. "It's really her, Sarah." Linda's voice was a sob, a prayer, a plea. What happened next defied any script. They didn't rush to each other like in some Hollywood climax. They moved slowly, with the fragile hope of two people who believed this moment was impossible. When they finally met, Linda's hands cupped Sarah's face, as if to confirm she wasn't a dream. The studio erupted not in cheers but in tears. The audience stood, some clapping, most weeping. Camera operators, their own eyes misty, kept filming. Even the toughest producers dabbed at their faces. Dr. Phil stepped back, giving them space. This wasn't about TV anymore. This was about a mother and daughter clawing their way back across a chasm of 12 years. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, over and over. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry too," Linda said, holding her daughter's face. "I love you. I never stopped loving you, not for a single second." They clung to each other, their embrace fierce, as if letting go might break them again. But the story didn't end there. As they parted, still holding hands, afraid to lose touch, Sarah reached into her pocket. Her hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped what she held, a small, tarnished silver bracelet, scratched but cherished. "You gave this to me," she said, her voice cracking. "On my 16th birthday, 2 hours before we fought. I wore it every day, even when I hated myself for leaving, even when I thought you'd never want me back." Linda stared, her breath catching. She raised her wrist, revealing an identical bracelet, just as worn, just as loved. "I had one made for myself," she whispered. The crowd gasped, the symbolism hitting like a tidal wave. Two women, bound across years of silence by a mother's love and a daughter's memory. Dr. Phil stepped forward, his voice steady but warm. "Linda, Sarah, listen to me. What happened 12 years ago, that was pain talking, fear talking. But what happens now is up to you. We've arranged for family therapists to help you rebuild, not for TV drama, but for real healing." He turned to the camera, speaking to the world. Estrangement rips families apart, and reconciliation isn't a fairy tale, it's hard work. Therapy, boundaries, trust, but it's worth it. The audience roared with applause. But Dr. Phil wasn't finished. "Sarah, running away at 16 doesn't make you a villain. It makes you a scared kid who made a desperate choice. What makes you extraordinary is standing here now, holding that bracelet, holding on to hope." Sarah broke down, and Linda pulled her close. Dr. Phil, a man who'd seen countless emotional moments, stood with tears in his eyes. This wasn't about ratings or viral moments. This was about second chances, about choosing love over pride, about fighting for family. Share this story, hit subscribe, because this is a moment you'll carry forever. After the cameras stopped, Linda and Sarah lingered on stage for 20 minutes, talking, laughing, crying, piecing together a decade of lost time. Dr. Phil sat with them, not as a host, but as a guardian of their fragile reunion. A crew member handed Linda the dropped photograph. She held it beside Sarah's face. "You look just like this," she said, smiling through tears. "You look alive," she corrected. "That's all I ever wanted." In the weeks that followed, they began the grueling work of rebuilding. Therapy became their anchor, helping them face the fight, the silence, and the future. Sarah moved closer to home, not into her mother's house, but near enough for coffee dates, then dinners, then holidays. Slowly they wove their lives back together. The bracelets became their touchstone. On tough days, when old wounds threatened to reopen, they'd touch their wrists and remember the day they chose each other again. Dr. Phil followed their journey quietly, ensuring they had support without exploiting their story for ratings. He didn't turn their pain into a spectacle or their healing into a follow-up episode. His team connected them with therapists who specialized in family reconciliation, providing tools to navigate the complex emotions of estrangement. Sarah and Linda met weekly, sometimes in a counselor's office, sometimes over coffee, rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. Sarah shared pieces of her life from those missing years, the struggles, the loneliness, the moments she almost reached out but didn't. Linda listened, learning to let go of the need to control, to judge, to fix. She spoke of her own journey, the guilt that had nearly consumed her. The nights she prayed for just one sign, her daughter was okay. Each session peeled back layers of hurt, revealing the love that had never truly left. The bracelets, those small, tarnished symbols, became more than jewelry. They were a promise, a reminder of the day they stood on that stage and chose to fight for each other. Sarah would trace the scratches on hers when she felt overwhelmed, grounding herself in the memory of her mother's tears, her mother's arms. Linda would touch her own bracelet during moments of doubt, recalling the way Sarah's voice broke when she said, "Mom." Those bracelets linked them across time, across pain, across the silence that had once felt unbreakable. Their journey wasn't perfect. There were days when old arguments resurfaced, when Sarah's fear of rejection clashed with Linda's lingering guilt. But they kept showing up for therapy for each other, for the future they both wanted. Sarah found a job in her hometown, not to erase the past but to plant roots for what was to come. Linda learned to ask questions instead of assuming, to listen instead of lecturing. They built new traditions: Sunday brunches, evening walks, quiet moments where words weren't needed because their presence was enough. A year later, Sarah sent Dr. Phil a letter, tucked inside an envelope with a photograph. It showed her and Linda, arms around each other, bracelets gleaming under the sunlight, smiles radiant with hard-won joy. "You gave me back my mother," she wrote. "You gave her back her daughter. Every day, we choose each other, and that choice started on your stage, Doctor." Phil kept that letter in his desk not as a trophy, but as a quiet reminder that television, at its best, can do more than entertain. It can heal, reconnect, and spark hope. He didn't share their story again, didn't call them back for a follow-up special. He let their healing unfold privately, knowing some moments are too sacred for the spotlight. The audience that day never forgot what they witnessed. For many, it was the most profound experience of their lives, a raw, unfiltered glimpse into the power of love to mend what seemed irreparable. One woman wrote to the show months later, "I hadn't spoken to my son in 3 years. Watching Linda and Sarah find each other gave me the courage to pick up the phone. We're rebuilding now, one conversation at a time." Another viewer reached out saying, "I called my estranged sister after seeing your show. We cried, we talked, we're healing. Thank you for showing me it's possible." These weren't isolated stories. Across the country, people watched that episode and felt a spark of courage, a nudge to reach out to someone they'd lost. Dr. Phil understood this ripple effect. One reunion could inspire thousands to try, to hope, to believe that what seemed impossible was just one brave decision away. Sarah and Linda's journey continued to evolve. They celebrated their first Thanksgiving together in over a decade, the tables set with extra care, the air filled with laughter and stories. Sarah brought a pie she'd baked, a small gesture that felt monumental to Linda, who remembered teaching her daughter to bake as a child. They exchanged gifts at Christmas, simple things wrapped in meaning: a scarf Linda knitted, a book Sarah knew her mother would love. Each moment was a brick in the foundation they were rebuilding, not to recreate the past, but to forge something new, something stronger. They learned to navigate disagreements with care, to apologize quickly, to forgive slowly but fully. Therapy remained a cornerstone, a safe space to unpack the complexities of their history. Sarah spoke of the fear that had driven her to run, the shame that kept her away. Linda admitted to the anger that had clouded her love, the pride that had built walls. Together, they dismantled those walls, word by word, session by session. The bracelets never left their wrists. They were scratched, faded, but beautiful in their imperfection, a testament to survival and second chances. On hard days when words failed or old wounds ached, Sarah would fidget with hers, remembering the moment she stepped into the light. Linda would glance at her own, recalling the weight of her daughter's hand in hers, after so many years apart. Those bracelets were their anchor, their proof that love could endure even the longest silence. Doctor, Phil's team checked in periodically, not for publicity, but to ensure the support was there. They connected Sarah and Linda with local resources, recommended books on reconciliation, even suggested small exercises to strengthen their bond, like writing letters to each other about moments they cherished. One letter from Linda read, "I remember the day you learned to ride a bike. You fell, but you got up, and I was so proud. I'm prouder now, seeing you stand here choosing us." Sarah's letter to her mother said, "I kept your bracelet because it was the only piece of home I could carry. Thank you for never giving up on me." The impact of that day on Dr. Phil's stage stretched far beyond Sarah and Linda. The episode aired to millions, and the letters poured in stories of families reunited, of parents and children taking tentative steps toward healing. A father wrote, "I hadn't seen my daughter in 5 years. Your show made me send her a message. We're talking again." A young woman shared, "I was Sarah once, too scared to go home. Seeing her bravery made me call my mom. We're working on it." These stories were the true legacy of that moment, proof that one act of courage could ripple outward, touching lives no one could count. Dr. Phil read every letter, not for ego, but because they reminded him why he did this work. He kept Sarah and Linda's photograph pinned to a board in his office, a quiet symbol of what's possible when love is given a chance to win. In the months and years that followed, Sarah and Linda continued to grow closer. They didn't erase the past. It was part of their story, etched into their hearts like the scratches on their bracelets. But they learned to live with it, to let it inform their love rather than define it. Sarah enrolled in night classes, chasing a dream she'd put on hold during her years away. Linda volunteered at a local support group for parents of estranged children, sharing her story to give others hope. They celebrated small victories, a shared laugh over a bad movie, a late night call just to talk, a hug that didn't need words. Each moment was a step toward wholeness, a reminder that healing isn't a destination but a journey. Dr. Phil's words from that day echoed in their minds, and in the minds of everyone who watched. "This is why I do this, not for fame or ratings, but for moments like this, when love proves stronger than pride, when family fights to be whole, when coming home is always possible." Those words became a mantra for Sarah and Linda, a guiding light on days when the path felt uncertain. They knew reconciliation wasn't easy. It demanded vulnerability, patience, and forgiveness, but it was worth every tear, every hard conversation, every moment of doubt. The bracelets, tarnished but gleaming, remained their symbol of that truth. Worn by time, strengthened by love, they were proof that some bonds, no matter how long they're shattered, were always meant to mend. The studio audience carried that day with them, a beacon of hope in a world too often fractured by pride and pain. One viewer's letter summed it up. "I saw Sarah and Linda and realized family is worth fighting for. I reached out to my brother after a decade of silence. We're not there yet, but we're trying." That was the power of their story, not just a reunion, but a call to action, a reminder that love can bridge even the widest gaps. Sarah and Linda kept choosing each other day after day, bracelet to bracelet, heart to heart. And somewhere, in the quiet moments when they touched those worn silver bands, they knew they'd found their way home, not to the past, but to a future they built together, one brave choice at a time.